The letter that
Give me
shook
the
the
child!
Vampire
He
King.
stays with me.
Long-form
not safe.
I
storytelling
will
script
protect him.
paragraph style.
Give me
The
my
rain
child.
fell without mercy that
He is
night,
mine
soaking the
now.
cracked sidewalks
No,
of the city
please.
as if the sky itself had given up on
They're
kindness.
What do they want?
Beneath the flickering
The
glow
child,
of
they
a
want the
broken
child.
street lamp, a young woman huddled inside a torn coat far too thin for winter. Her name was Elena. She had once
The storm
dreamed
is
of
upon
becoming
us.
a
We
nurse.
must hurry.
I
Now
know,
she
our
counted
child
her
is the key.
blessings by how
Let's
many
go.
hours she could sleep without being chased away. She was homeless, hungry, and invisible. People passed her every day, men in tailored suits, women clutching warm coffee cups, couples laughing beneath umbrellas, none of them seeing her. And yet, despite the cruelty of the world, Elena still shared what little she had. When another homeless girl shivered beside her, Elena wrapped her own scarf around the girl's neck and smiled as if warmth were infinite. That was the night he saw her. From the shadows across the street, a tall man stood perfectly still, untouched by rain. His black coat didn't glisten with water. His presence bent the air itself. Mortals felt an instinctive fear around him without knowing why. He was known to the hidden world as King Alaric Nocturne, ruler of the Western Vampire Dominion. To humans, he was a reclusive billionaire who never aged. Alaric had walked the earth for over 700 years. He had watched empires rise and rot. He had buried lovers, enemies, and emotions alike. Compassion was a weakness he had long since murdered within himself. Until he saw her give away the only warmth she had. Something ancient stirred in his dead heart. He should have walked away. He always did. Attachment led to ruin. Humans were fleeting, fragile things. But when a group of drunk men staggered toward Elena, laughter sharp with cruelty, Alaric moved without thinking. The men never even saw him coming. By the time Elena dared open her eyes, the alley was silent. The men were gone. And standing before her was the most beautiful, and terrifying, man she had ever seen. "You should not be here," he said, his voice deep and calm, like distant thunder. Elena trembled but lifted her chin. Neither should they. That answer surprised him. Instead of fear, there was dignity. Instead of begging, there was quiet strength. Against every rule he had written in blood, Alaric offered her a ride. A warm meal. One night of safety. One night turned into something else. For the first time in centuries, the Vampire King allowed himself to feel human. By morning, he was gone. No name. No promise. No goodbye. 18 months later, in a penthouse overlooking a city that never slept, King Alaric received a letter written on cheap paper. The scent hit him first, familiar, impossible, dangerous. His immortal hands trembled as he read 3 words that shattered his eternity. "He is yours." Inside the envelope was a photograph. A baby boy with pale skin, dark curls, and eyes that glowed faintly crimson. Alaric felt something he had not felt since the day he died. Fear. Because vampire kings were not supposed to have children. And half-human ones were executed. Outside, thunder cracked across the sky. Far below, in a freezing shelter on the edge of the city, Elena pulled her son closer as shadows gathered. The war for a forbidden child had begun. The search for the child and the awakening. The city streets were slick with rain, but to Alaric Nocturne,
Give me
it
the
made no
child.
He
difference.
stays with me.
Footsteps
Please, it's not
echoed
safe.
below
I
the
will
high
protect him.
towers, but his were silent,
Give me my
predatory,
child.
and deliberate.
He is mine
Every
now.
shadow seemed to
No,
bow to him.
please.
Yet for the first time in centuries, his steps were not just those of a king, they were those of a father. A father who had no idea how to reclaim the life he had left behind. 18 months ago, a single night of weakness and compassion had left him with a son he never expected. A son whose existence was illegal in the ancient vampire codices. A son whose mere survival threatened the delicate balance between vampire clans and human oblivion. Alaric clenched the photograph in his pale hand, staring at the boy's luminous eyes. The boy, Lucian, as the letter claimed, was the tether between his immortal life and something he never wanted: responsibility, love, vulnerability. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of the city, Elena paced inside the small, drafty apartment she called home. The boy, her son, slept fitfully in a makeshift crib. She had spent hours trying to soothe him with warm blankets and raw meat, though it was only a temporary solution. There was something in him, something undeniable, that made her both proud and terrified. He was stronger than any infant should be, and his eyes occasionally shimmered with a color she had never seen in a human child. That same color now haunted her every thought, a warning that danger was closing in. It started as whispers. Strange men watching from alleyways. The sound of tires crunching in abandoned lots. Shadows that lingered too long at the edges of her vision. Elena had thought it was paranoia, but instinct told her it was far worse. Someone, or something, knew about her son. Someone who could see his power, and would not stop until they claimed him. Alaric's journey to her had not been easy. He could not simply walk into the human world without revealing his identity. Even in modern cities, the undead were hunted in secret, their existence denied but feared by those who understood. He moved through the streets like smoke, unseen and undetected, tracking the faint resonance of the child's blood through the crowded avenues. With every heartbeat, he felt the bond grow stronger, sharper, a thread linking him to a being that was half human, half vampire, and entirely extraordinary. The moment he reached her building, he paused. The structure was old, neglected, with peeling paint and broken staircases, but inside, it held warmth, the warmth of humanity. He could sense it immediately. Elena's fear, her love, her desperation. He could smell the mixture of sweat, milk, and raw iron that clung to her son. His claws itched to tear through any obstacle, to claim them both and drag them into safety, but he had learned restraint. A father could not merely take what he desired, he had to earn trust first. The encounter was inevitable. Elena was startled by the shadow in her doorway, but she had faced worse in her life: street bullies, exploiters, indifferent landlords, and she did not crumble. "Who are you?" she demanded, keeping her voice steady even as her hands trembled over her son. The boy stirred in her arms, eyes wide, sensing the predator and protector in one. "I am someone who should have been here long ago," Alaric said, his tone both commanding and hesitant. "Your son, he is mine. He is extraordinary. And they are coming." "They?" Elena whispered, panic flickering across her face. "The council. The clans. Anyone who understands what he is, they will see him as an abomination." Alaric's crimson gaze softened for the first time as it fell on her. "And I will not allow them to harm you. Or him." The boy stirred again, this time more awake, his small hands gripping Elena's sweater. Suddenly, the room seemed to hum, a low, vibrating resonance that made the walls quiver. Elena felt it deep in her chest. The boy's eyes glowed faintly crimson, mirroring Alaric's. Her son, her child, was awakening to something far beyond her understanding. He cried out, not the innocent wail of a human infant, but a sound ancient, powerful, a summons that seemed to shake the very air. Alaric's instincts screamed. "You can feel it, can't you?" he asked, almost to himself. "He knows danger. He feels them coming." Elena's hands shook as she held the child closer. What is he?" she asked. Alaric knelt before them, his immense presence bending around her small frame. "He is what he was meant to be. But the world will never accept him. Not yet. And that is why I am here. We must leave. Now." Before she could protest, a series of sharp knocks echoed through the apartment. Shadows moved in the stairwell, human silhouettes, but enhanced, unnatural. Elena froze. Her son stiffened, small fists balled. Alaric rose to his full height, fangs glinting faintly in the dim light. "They know. They are faster than I expected. We have little time." With a speed no human could follow, Alaric moved to the doorway. In one motion, he scooped the boy from Elena's arms, wrapping him protectively. The first two figures entered the room, humans with silvered weapons, eyes glowing faintly red. Vampire hunters, modified and trained for centuries, but utterly no match for Alaric's wrath. "You will not touch him," he said, voice calm, but every word carried the weight of death. A single step forward, and the first hunter's weapon disintegrated in his grip. The air trembled with the power of the child, the resonance of blood recognition binding father, mother, and son together. Elena, despite terror, stood her ground. "We can't run forever," she shouted, gripping the boy's blanket. "We'll die." Alaric's eyes softened for a fleeting moment. "No. Not with me. You will not die tonight. But we must move." Before another second could pass, the hunters advanced. Alaric's speed was a blur. He disarmed them, struck them down with precision that was almost graceful, almost elegant. But the boy cried out again, a keening wail that split the air, a warning and a shield. The hunters froze, their senses overwhelmed by the child's raw power, and in that moment, Alaric seized the opportunity. He vanished from sight with a speed only the immortal possessed, taking Elena and her son with him. By the time the city awoke the next morning, the apartment was empty, the hunters gone, and the only evidence of the night's chaos was a faint scorched mark on the floorboards. Elena clutched her son, trembling, and looked up at the man who had saved them yet again. Who are you?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Alaric's eyes met hers, calm, resolute, and filled with something she could not yet name. "I am your protector. And I am his father. But there is more you must know. The council is not just a threat. They will demand him. And if they fail, the clans beyond them will come. We are about to enter a war the world cannot see, and you are now a part of it." Elena held her son closer. Fear, yes. But also awe. Something told her that, despite centuries of power, despite the threat of immortal politics, this man would protect them at all costs. And somewhere deep inside, a spark of hope ignited, because she realized she was not just a helpless girl anymore. She had a family. And families, even the most impossible ones, fought together. The storm outside raged, mirroring the storm to come. And in the shadows beyond the city, eyes watched. The council had noticed the child's awakening. The war for the half-human vampire heir had only just begun. The Vampire Council and the Awakening Power. The early dawn painted the city in muted shades of gray, but inside the fortress-like penthouse of Alaric Nocturne, the tension was anything but muted. Elena had spent a restless night awake, watching the boy, Eric, as they now quietly called him, sleep with an intensity that was almost unnatural. His small chest rose and fell in perfect rhythm with the strange pulse that resonated through the room, as if the very air was attuned to his heartbeat. Even in sleep, his presence radiated power, drawing the attention of forces that were far older and far more dangerous than she could imagine. Alaric stood by the panoramic windows, staring down at the city below. To the mortals below, he was just another enigmatic billionaire, a shadow in the glass towers, untouchable and aloof. But in the secret world of vampires, he was a king whose bloodline commanded loyalty, fear, and reverence. And tonight, that kingdom felt impossibly small compared to the challenge before him. The council had already detected Eric's existence. His son was considered a violation of every law the immortal world had held sacred for centuries, a hybrid, a damper of ancient prophecy, a potential weapon that no clan could control. A sudden chime interrupted the silence. A holographic display activated above Alaric's desk, revealing 5 figures seated in shadowed chairs. The Council of the Eternal, the ruling body of vampire royalty, appeared, their expressions unreadable behind the digital masks that concealed their immortal faces. Alaric Nocturne, the lead voice rasped, deep and imperious. "We have detected unauthorized blood signatures in the Eastern Territories. A child. Explain. Alaric's jaw tightened. You are aware of the child's existence, as you always are. Yes, he exists. And yes, he is mine. He is not a threat to humanity, only to those who seek to exploit him. The council murmured among themselves, voices echoing like a chorus of the damned. A hybrid child, one of them hissed. You dare flout centuries of law? Such an anomaly cannot survive. You risk destabilizing the balance. Alaric's pale fingers clenched the edge of his desk. I will not allow harm to come to him. No law, no council, no clan can dictate what is right when it comes to my blood. His crimson eyes flared, a warning and a promise. He is my son. And I will protect him, even against you. The discussion escalated into a storm of threats, ultimatums, and reminders of centuries of tradition. Elena watched from the doorway, clutching Eric close, feeling the weight of their predicament settle on her shoulders. She had been a simple human, living day to day, barely scraping by, and now she was thrust into a world of immortal politics, ancient laws, and dangers she could not yet comprehend. Alaric noticed her gaze. For a fleeting moment, he stepped closer. Do not fear, he said, his voice low and steady, a grounding force against the chaos of the council. I will not let them harm you or him. But you must trust me. Absolute trust. If you falter, even for a moment, it could cost all of us. Elena swallowed hard. She had always been cautious, a survivor. But there was something in his presence, in the way he spoke and moved, that inspired confidence. She nodded slowly. I trust you, she whispered, though a part of her still trembled. Before the council could continue, the room shifted as Eric stirred. His eyes opened, glowing faintly with the same crimson fire as Alaric's. He reached out, tiny fingers brushing Elena's hair and then Alaric's chest. The resonance between father and son was instantaneous and electrifying, a tether that pulsed with raw power. The council's projections flickered. One member hissed, sensing the energy. It reacts to him. His blood. He is awakening, Alaric said quietly. And with his awakening comes danger. The clans, the reapers, anyone with knowledge of his power will come for him. And we must be ready. That day passed in preparation. Elena learned quickly, guided by Alaric, how to navigate the hidden world around her. She practiced maintaining her composure, moving through security wards, and understanding the subtle warnings that Alaric's network of spies and servants provided. Each lesson was punctuated with moments of tenderness, Alaric teaching her to defend herself, to shield Eric, and quietly, to accept the bond forming between them. The slow burn of their connection began to show in small, almost imperceptible ways. He would brush a strand of hair from her face while explaining strategy. She would offer a hand to steady him when his thoughts drifted into distant, centuries-old memories. There was a growing intimacy, not spoken but deeply felt, a resonance of hearts and bloodlines intertwined. As night fell, the first attack came. A group of mercenaries, enhanced with ancient vampire blood, attempted to breach the fortress disguised as a diplomatic convoy. They had underestimated Alaric's foresight. Within seconds, they were neutralized, pinned against walls or immobilized by wards that glimmered with ancient runes. But Eric's cry shattered the calm, his power, barely contained, rippled outward, shattering glass and rattling metal. Elena realized, with both awe and terror, that her son's abilities were growing faster than anyone anticipated. Alaric held him close, feeling the raw surge of power, and whispered, "You are stronger than any law, than any council. You are our hope. And I will ensure nothing, no one, can take that from you." Elena, exhausted but resolute, finally allowed herself to speak the words she had been holding back. I never thought I could survive this world. But with you, with him, maybe I can. Maybe we can. Alaric's gaze softened, and for the first time, he allowed himself to show vulnerability. We will face this together. But understand, the council will not rest. They will not forgive. And soon, we must move beyond these walls, beyond the city. The war for his life has only begun. Outside, the storm raged. But inside, a new force had emerged, a family, bound by blood, trust, and the unspoken promise that no darkness, no matter how ancient or powerful, could sever. And in the shadows beyond the penthouse, eyes watched, plotting, calculating. The council had sent envoys, assassins, spies. The game was on. The child's destiny was being written in real time, and the first pieces had already moved into place. Alaric turned to Elena, voice low and commanding, yet tender. Sleep while you can. Tomorrow, we strike first. And you must be ready to embrace the impossible. Because nothing in our world will be easy from here. Elena held Eric tightly, closing her eyes for a moment, letting the warmth of their tiny family soothe her fear. She knew one truth, more certain than anything else: in a world of immortals, wars, and ancient laws, love, courage, and trust could become weapons just as deadly, and just as necessary, as fangs and fire. The storm outside continued, but for one fleeting moment, inside, there was calm. Shadows strike and the trial of blood. The first light of dawn filtered through the reinforced glass of Sebastian Tower, yet the penthouse felt heavier than the stormy night it had survived. Alaric Nocturne paced the length of the marble floors, the faint echo of his footsteps blending with the distant hum of the city below. Outside, the world was oblivious to the brewing war. Inside, Elena cradled Eric in her arms, her senses sharpened by the relentless vigilance that Alaric demanded. The boy's powers, previously contained to small tremors and instinctive movements, now pulsed stronger, responding to every human heartbeat, every sound of the wind, every flicker of emotion in the room. "Father," Eric whispered suddenly, his voice carrying an almost preternatural resonance. Elena's pulse skipped. He was barely walking age, yet the words were clear, commanding, and filled with an intensity that unnerved even Alaric. "Father, danger." Alaric stiffened. His eyes, once human blue, now bled crimson in response to the threat he could sense through Eric's own energy. The protective wards of the penthouse flared softly, a ripple across the marble floors, a subtle warning to those outside: trespassers would be destroyed. Elena hugged Eric tighter, feeling his warmth, his heartbeat, the raw life force mingling with her own. "What do you see?" she asked, voice barely audible. Alaric knelt beside them. "The council's shadow agents are already here. They've infiltrated the city, likely blending among the humans. They want him, your son. And if they take him, there's nothing left for me to protect." The day passed in tense preparation. Elena learned the art of subtle defense, guided by Alaric and Arthur, the undying ghoul who had served the family for centuries. Each lesson was as much about survival as it was about trust in Alaric, in her instincts, and in the child she now carried within the fragile yet unbreakable circle of their new family. By evening, the first strike came. A covert team of vampire assassins, disguised as diplomats attending a charity gala below, breached the tower's perimeter. The alarms were silent to the outside world but deafening inside. Eric's cry, a high-pitched harmonic note, resonated through the steel-reinforced walls, and in response, Alaric transformed from a distant, cold king into a predator ready to annihilate anything in his path. Elena followed closely, heart pounding, fear and determination mingling in equal measure. "We need to move him," she shouted, adrenaline sharpening her focus. Alaric swept Eric into his arms with inhuman speed, fangs barely concealed, eyes burning. "Stay close to me," he commanded. His trench coat flowed behind him like shadows, every movement precise, predatory, controlled. The assassins struck with precision, weapons tipped with ancient silver and deadly toxins. One reached Eric's room just as Alaric intercepted, moving faster than thought. A human mercenary barely had time to scream before the vampire king's hand gripped his throat and flung him through the wall. Another raised a crossbow, but the wards flared, melting metal and wood alike. The battle was violent, swift, and chaotic, yet Alaric moved with the fluid grace of centuries of experience. Eric, watching, lifted a tiny hand. The effect was immediate. The nearest assassin froze mid-step, frozen in place as if time itself had warped around him. Elena gasped. His power, it's responding to his fear and anger. Yes, Alaric said, eyes narrowing. And soon, it will respond to more than just instinct. He's awakening faster than I anticipated. We must train him, control it, or we risk losing him, and everything. After the attackers were neutralized, Alaric finally allowed himself to lower Eric into Elena's arms. Her eyes met his, searching for some reassurance in the chaos. He's so powerful, she whispered, a mixture of awe and terror in her tone. Alaric's hand brushed her hair from her face. Power without guidance is dangerous. That's why I brought you here. You are his anchor. And mine. His voice softened, almost unheard over the storm raging in both their hearts. Elena felt the weight of the words, the unspoken promise. He was not just her protector, but her partner in this war of shadows. Night fell again, this time quieter, but the tension lingered like a shadow refusing to leave. Elena stayed with Eric, feeling his heartbeat synchronize with hers, while Alaric returned to his private study. The council's emissaries had not yet retreated. Whispers of rebellion, assassination, and political maneuvering filtered through his secure channels. A soft knock echoed on the study door. Elena stepped in, carrying Eric, her silhouette framed against the moonlight streaming through the windows. Alaric looked up, his expression unreadable, but something in the gentle way she held their son drew a rare, human smile across his face. "You're learning quickly," he said, voice low, almost private. "I have to," she replied. "For him, for us. I won't let them take him." Alaric moved closer, hand brushing her cheek, a touch so light it felt like a whisper. "You're not just learning to fight, Elena. You're learning to command. That's why I need you by my side, not only as his mother but as mine." The words lingered in the air between them, heavier than any sword, more binding than any law. Elena's breath caught. She had survived humiliation, poverty, and fear. She had faced predators, mortals, and immortals alike. But never had she faced this, the slow burn of something dangerous, beautiful, and forbidden. Outside, the shadows of the city seemed to twist and pulse. The council would strike again. They would send agents, assassins, and spies, each more dangerous than the last. But inside, Alaric and Elena held a fragile, glowing bubble of family, love, and raw, untested power. And Eric, in her arms, slept peacefully, unaware that his first war had already begun, and that his destiny, intertwined with theirs, would reshape the world forever. As the night deepened, Alaric whispered to Elena, his voice almost a growl of longing and warning, "Tomorrow, they will come for him again. And we will show them why no one, not even the council, dares challenge a king and his queen, and the child they protect." The storm outside continued, but inside the fortress, a new force had emerged, one that would not yield, one that would not bow, and one that would fight, even against immortality itself. The king, the queen, and the child who changed the world. The war did not begin with fire or screaming sirens.
The storm is upon us. We must hurry.
It began with
I
silence.
know, our child is the key.
A
Then let's go.
silence so deep it pressed against the walls of Sebastian Tower like a held breath, heavy and ominous. Alaric Nocturne stood at the center of the command chamber, his posture calm but coiled, like a predator moments before the strike. Across dozens of holographic screens, his intelligence network fed him fragments of truth, clan movements, broken treaties, encrypted council transmissions. Every signal pointed to the same conclusion. The council had decided. The child would die. Elena felt it before anyone spoke. She stood near the reinforced windows, Eric asleep against her shoulder, his small fingers curled into her shirt as if instinctively anchoring himself to her heartbeat. Her life had once been measured in hours, where to sleep, what to eat, how to survive another night unseen. Now, her life was measured in heartbeats, each one belonging not just to her, but to the child she would die to protect. "They're coming," she said softly. Alaric turned to her. In that moment, he did not look like a king. He looked like a man who had lived too long without hope and had finally found something worth burning the world for. "Yes," he replied. "All of them." The first breach happened just before dawn. The sky over the city darkened unnaturally as ancient sigils ignited across the horizon. Vampire clans long thought neutral revealed themselves, their airships and shadow walkers tearing through the veil of secrecy that had hidden their kind for centuries. The council had sanctioned open war, gambling that erasing the hybrid child would restore order. They were wrong. The tower shook as the first wave struck. Alaric moved like living wrath, commanding defenses, tearing through attackers with terrifying precision. He did not revel in the violence. He endured it. Every strike was calculated. Every kill was a shield placed between the enemy and his family. But even kings could not be everywhere at once. A secondary assault team breached the inner sanctum where Elena had been ordered to stay. Silver-laced weapons crackled with lethal energy as 3 elite enforcers stepped from the shadows. Elena did not scream. She did not run. She stood still, heart pounding, Eric stirring in her arms. "No," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "You will not take him." The enforcers laughed, until Eric opened his eyes. The room changed. The air warped, bending inward toward the child like gravity itself had chosen him. His eyes glowed, not crimson, but something deeper, older, a fusion of human soul and immortal power. Elena felt it then, fully and clearly. Her son was not a mistake. He was balance. The enforcers never touched the ground. An unseen force lifted them, crushed the weapons from their hands, and flung them backward into the reinforced walls with bone-shattering force. Elena collapsed to her knees, clutching Eric as the power subsided, tears streaming down her face. "I've got you," she whispered. "Mama's here." Alaric arrived seconds later, the scent of battle still clinging to him. When he saw Elena unharmed and Eric calm in her arms, something in him finally broke, not in weakness, but in release. He knelt before them, resting his forehead briefly against Elena's. "You did this," he said quietly. "Not with power. With love." Above them, the war reached its climax. The council's flagship descended, projecting the final judgment. A decree echoed through the city, amplified by ancient magic. "Alaric Nocturne, surrender the hybrid. Or watch everything you rule burn." Alaric rose slowly, turning toward the skyline. His voice, when he spoke, carried across every frequency, every ward, every hidden ear in the supernatural world. "You call him a hybrid," he said. "An abomination. A threat." He looked back at Elena and Eric. "I call him my son." The sky ignited. What followed was not slaughter, it was revelation. Eric's presence resonated across the battlefield, neutralizing the bloodlust of ancient vampires, disrupting control sigils, unraveling centuries-old dominance magic. The clans faltered. The council panicked. For the first time in immortal history, their power had an equal. And it was a child held in his mother's arms. When the final echoes faded, the council retreated. Not defeated, but exposed. Their laws shattered. Their authority broken. The world had changed. Days later, the city returned to its rhythm, unaware of how close it had come to annihilation. Sebastian Tower stood intact, but something within it had transformed forever. Elena stood on the terrace as the sun dipped below the horizon, Eric playing at her feet, laughing, a sound so human it brought tears to her eyes. Alaric joined her, his presence no longer cold, no longer distant. "You were never meant to be invisible," he said quietly. "You were meant to be seen." She turned to him, emotion swelling in her chest. I never wanted a crown, she said. He met her gaze. Good. Then you'll rule with compassion. He knelt, not as a king asserting dominance, but as a man choosing partnership. Stand with me. Not because of destiny. Not because of blood. But because you choose this life. Elena looked at her son. At the future she never imagined. At the man who had not saved her, but respected her. I choose us, she said. That night, the vampire world changed its laws. The child lived. The king softened. And the girl the world once ignored became the woman who reshaped immortality itself. Not through power. But through love.
The storm is upon us. We must hurry.
I know, our child is the key.
Then let's go.